Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of MultiFamily with the awesome and amazing, super fancy Veena Jetti.
I like the super fancy.
You definitely are, and you always look great. So today we're going to talk about why investing in multifamily. I mean, there are so many investment strategies out there, and people don't know which one to go for. So let's give them a little bit of a hint this time. So I know that multifamily is way different than other assets, such as like stocks, because you cannot even touch a stock, right? I mean, so why is that a really good benefit?
Well, everybody likes tangible investments, right? And what I really like about real estate and investing in real estate is that I have control. I can't control what Apple does. I can't control what Amazon does. I would like to be the boss of those companies. I just am not, right? And so I can control what happens at our assets when we're investing in real estate. So I always like to have tangible assets. A lot of investors like being able to go into assets, touch them, feel them, walk around them, see what they look like, improve them. And real estate is a very limited supply. There's not endless amounts of buildings or land or real estate available. So it's very limited in supply. Whereas companies, there could be 30 new companies that pop up tomorrow. So I personally like tangible investments. And I think as it correlates or tracks to the stock market, real estate does not lose value overnight the same way that the stock market does. And I know I say that, and then a bunch of people are gonna be like, oh, but the crash in 2008. But that was because of the market fundamentals. But at a baseline, fundamentally, real estate over a long period of time is a very solid and stable asset class.
That's right. And we have seen that throughout all of these crises, multifamily buildings have been doing really well.
Yes.
Why is it that they're still surviving all of these like economic crises that we're seeing and that is affecting so many other investments?
Yeah, so I like to think it's because multifamily is the best of both worlds between commercial and residential. People always need a place to live, but multifamily lets you do it at the commercial scale. So that's what I love about multifamily. Now, there's something called a Sharpe ratio, a mathematical equation. I'm not making this up because I'm super biased to multifamily, but basically what it is it is a way for us to calculate the amount of return or reward we get for the amount of relative risk you're taking on. So the more risk you take on, generally the more reward you get. And what the Sharpe ratio does is it measures the standard deviations of risk to reward. And the higher the Sharpe ratio, it means the more return you're getting for the least amount of relative risk. And if you look back historically across all asset classes, multifamily has the highest Sharpe ratio. So like I said, I'm totally biased, but I'm not making this up. And so the Sharpe ratio is a really good indicator of how well an asset class is going to perform. And it looks back historically to see that. Now, the one big limitation of the Sharpe ratio is that it measures in standard deviation. So if you think about like a bell curve, it measures how many standard deviations you are away from the center of the bell curve. But it doesn't tell you which direction. So you could have a high Sharpe ratio and be totally on the opposite end of risk versus multifamily, but multifamily is in the positive direction. So
okay, so we're good then.
Yes, we're good. We're good.
But as you were mentioning, like I don't think that you're biased. It's because in reality, you're not inventing that formula. It already exists.
Exactly.
And we have proof
Everybody
that it actually
thinks
performs.
Objectively that it's the best asset class. That's
true. And also because like the demand in housing has been crazy during this crisis. And I feel like that's a really big benefit. Am I right?
Yes. There has been a huge demand because 1 in 4 homes this year has been bought by investors. And investors are not buying $10 million homes. They're buying that $200,000 to $500,000 home, which is where most Americans usually buy a home. So it's now creating a massive demand for housing that wasn't there the year before or the year before or the year before. Last year, 1 in 5 homes at that price point, and now it's 1 in 4. So as you can see, there's less and less product available in the single family space. So a lot of our assets, we focus on those tenants that would be buying a home, but either need to save for the down payment, they've relocated for a job. It's those very solid, good credit tenants that we look for in our assets. And I think the other thing to remember too is as interest rates keep going up, houses are becoming less and less affordable because the monthly payment is so high. And so what you could have bought even 6 months, 12 months ago, you can buy a fraction of that now because interest rates are continuing to go up. And we know they're going to continue increasing. So we know that buying power is going to be less and less. We also know that inflation is making the dollar less and less powerful in terms of purchasing power, right? So the last CPI came out at like 8 point something percent, 8.2%. That means that just having the dollar in your bank account, you're losing 8.2 cents by having that in your bank account, right? And so it's another reason why real estate is such a powerful tool, because it's an inflationary hedge. It is one of the best inflationary hedges to invest in income producing real estate.
And at the same time, the security of having real estate, because every single year we're going to see more people like being born, and they're going to need houses. So that is like one of the pieces of investments that you can do that you know that it's going to be there forever. People are going to need to live in a place forever. So that is a really secure way to invest your money on. Also, I noticed that quite a bit of the buildings that are being made are Class A buildings, and it can be a little tricky for people to purchase those buildings because it's way too pricey. So I feel like it's a really good market to target, because people are moving more into like renting until they can actually have the qualifications for owning a house. You also mentioned that there are some tax benefits that we can have by investing into multifamily. What are some of those?
Yeah, so real estate is very tax advantageous because we have what's called depreciation. So the government allows us to depreciate the asset knowing that there's going to be wear and tear on the building or the asset. We can further maximize that by doing what's called a cost segregation study. Now, this only really works once you're at a certain size, or if you really need the tax benefit. So you may not do it on a $50,000 or $100,000 home purchase, but at a $500,000 home purchase, it maybe makes sense. And this is for investment property. And what it lets us do is bring in a team of experts, and then they're going to say, okay, this amount is for the furniture, fixture, and equipment of the building. So like your plumbing systems, your HVAC, all of that. And this is the value of that. Then this amount is allocated toward the land, and this amount is allocated toward the structure of the building. So it allows you to basically segregate the cost of what you're purchasing. And the reason this is important is because the IRS then allows us to take what's called bonus depreciation. So through 2022, it's the last year that we can take 100% bonus depreciation in year one. So that means instead of having to wait to depreciate something over its useful life, we can now say, okay, the HVAC, we're depreciating that at 100% today. So if it costs $100, we're depreciating all $100 this year instead of over time. And so it allows you to depreciate very quickly. And of course, you know, you want to have a CPA. I am not a CPA. I know enough to be dangerous, but you want to have a CPA or a tax professional who can really advise you on whether the strategy makes sense. But it can be a very powerful tool. And then also remember, there's the flip side of when you sell the asset, there's the opportunity to do a 1031 exchange. So what that means is you can go and you can exchange a like-kind asset for a like-kind asset. So I can buy a 200 unit building. Let's say I buy it at 50 million, I sell it at $70 million. Well, I can then take that 70 million and go and buy $100 million asset. And I can defer the capital gains owed on that $20 million. So it's a very powerful tool to continue purchasing and moving from asset to asset while deferring your capital gains taxes. And again, you want your tax professionals to advise, because one, it's a very complex structure. Two, you need to have a qualified intermediary. So that means there has to be somebody in the middle who takes the money. So you never touch the money from the sale from 50 to 70 million. But then, so that way it's allowed by the IRS. But then also there's different tax implications of when you do actually sell and realize the gain, you eventually will have to pay the gain on it potentially. So you want a tax strategist who can help you plan that out and decide, okay, this year it makes sense for us to realize a gain, or no, we want to keep deferring it. So the 1031 exchange is a very powerful tool that's currently available.
And that's one of the great advantages of real estate, that you can actually do those type of strategies, because it's kind of like the way of the government to incentivize all of the investors to keep going into their deals. Now, when it comes to multifamily, I know that there are multiple sizes, and I feel like that's also another advantage, because you can grow borrow as much as you want or as little as you want.
Yeah. So one of the big advantages for me, especially, is the scale that you can get to in multifamily. It's very easy for me to go and buy 300 multifamily doors, units, versus trying to buy 300 houses, right? Like, I mean, the idea of having to buy 300 houses, you don't have the benefit of scale in one location. So property management is going to be significantly more expensive because now I need to have someone who can go to 300 different locations. I don't have the benefit of necessarily having one landscaping contract or one insurance contract. So just being so disaggregated with multiple homes in different areas is a much more difficult management tool than it is to have 300 multifamily units in one place or 100 units in one place. So the power of scale is really where multifamily shines. And just in real estate in general, right? This is when we talk about passive income and an unlimited return potential. Because with real estate, I can only go to a job and work 1 hour. There's only one Veena, and that's it, right? Like whatever I can do in that hour is what I'm doing. But I can have real estate, and whether I have one door or 100 doors or 10,000 doors, I can collect rent on 10,000 doors just in 1 hour, the same way I can collect rent on one door. So you can get to truly massive scale with that. And also, I can collect rent while I'm sleeping, right? Like my bank account can still accept transfers, etc. Whereas with a job, if you're not awake and you're not
performing your duties,
exactly. And so you're susceptible to a lot of risk when you're actively working versus having real estate investments or passive income investments.
That's right, because then again, you're maximizing the use of your time. And as an investor, I feel like that's one of the key advantages that we want to look for, because your time is money.
Yeah.
And it truly is.
Yeah.
And you need to find the best way possible to make sure that that multiplies as much as you can.
Because we can't make more than 24 hours in a day.
That's right.
But we can make more money in that 1 hour.
That is totally true. Any last tips that you would give for someone that is beginning to look into multifamily?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are really intimidated trying to get into multifamily, but it's always kind of the holy grail. It's where everybody wants to end up. If I could go back and like tell younger Veena something, it would be, don't be intimidated by it. Find, again, the right partners, find the right group of people to be around, even if you're just in proximity to them, so that you're learning and understanding how they're doing it, because there are many people that will help you get your first step into multifamily. And once you do the first deal, it's so much easier to do the second deal. It's exponentially easier every time.
If anything, probably it gets addictive as well.
It does a little bit.
A little. Thank you so much again, Veena. And thank you to our audience. And go out there, find a partner. You can definitely do it, and you can get started into multifamily. We're going to see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.